An awakening comes not from books or speeches, but from years lived attentively. It arrives quietly, often after the applause has faded and the demands have softened. You may notice it in an unguarded moment, perhaps while sitting alone at dusk or walking a familiar road with no urgency to reach the end. You realize that this season of life carries a different kind of authority, one that does not need to announce itself. It is the authority of having endured, observed, corrected, and continued. It is the confidence that comes from having lived long enough to know what matters, and just as importantly, what does not. The revelation what this stage reveals is simple yet profound. Much of what once consumed your energy was never as important as it seemed. In earlier decades, life demanded speed. You were measured by output, applauded for motion, rewarded for endurance. Now, standing further along the path, you can see how often urgency masqueraded as importance. The need to prove yourself, to accumulate symbols of success, to outrun doubt and comparison, these forces once pulled hard at your attention. With the wisdom of experience, their grip loosens. You recognize that meaning was never found in constant motion, but in alignment between values and actions, between intention and outcome. Like a craftsman who no longer rushes the work, you understand that what lasts is shaped patiently. The years have stripped away illusion, leaving behind truth that feels solid, earned, and unshakable. This revelation is not regretful, it is liberating. It allows you to stand firmly in who you are, without apology or performance. As Socrates observed, the unexamined life is not worth living. What decades teach is not self-criticism, but self-knowledge. You have examined your life through experience, not theory, and that examination has refined you. The gift of years, only time could have taught you what truly matters. Decades of relationships, work, loss, and renewal have refined your judgment in ways no instruction manual ever could. You have seen friendships deepen, fade, and sometimes return transformed. You have watched careers rise, plateau, and conclude. You have learned that wisdom is rarely loud, and that character reveals itself slowly, under pressure and repetition. The years have taught you patience without passivity, knowing when to wait and when to act. They have taught humility without weakness, accepting limitation without surrendering dignity. They have taught confidence without arrogance, an assurance grounded not in opinion, but in evidence lived. This is knowledge no shortcut could provide, because it was earned through repetition, consequence, and reflection. Consider Aristotle, who said, "Knowing yourself is the beginning of all wisdom." Self-knowledge ripens with time. You did not arrive at it quickly, but thoroughly, shaped by years of observation and correction. Like a tree with deep roots, your strength is not in rapid growth, but in stability. Storms that once threatened to uproot you now pass with less damage. You bend, but you do not break. This is the gift of years, the quiet resilience that comes from having endured enough to trust yourself. The opportunity now. With this accumulated wisdom comes a rare opportunity, the freedom to choose with clarity. You no longer chase every invitation or measure yourself by outdated standards. You have lived long enough to know that not every open door leads somewhere worth going. The calendar no longer rules you, it serves you. You understand the value of time because you have watched it pass, season by season, chapter by chapter. What lies before you now is the chance to act with intention, guided by perspective rather than pressure. Decisions are no longer driven by fear of missing out, but by an understanding of what deserves your remaining attention. This is not withdrawal from life, but refinement of it. Selecting depth over breadth, meaning over noise. As Viktor Frankl wrote, "When we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves. Later life offers mastery of response. You may not control circumstances as you once tried to, but you govern your response with wisdom earned. This opportunity is precious because it is honest. It asks you to invest where returns are measured not in applause, but in alignment with what you know to be true. This is the moment when legacy becomes conscious, not legacy as monuments or titles, but as influence, example, and contribution. The decades behind you have prepared you to shape what remains with care and purpose. You understand that legacy is often transmitted quietly, through values modeled, counsel given, and steadiness demonstrated. Perhaps legacy appears in mentoring someone younger, not with lectures, but with presence. Perhaps it is in finishing a piece of work long delayed, not for recognition, but for completion. Perhaps it is in reconciliation or in forgiveness freely given. These acts do not make headlines, but they shape lives. Reflect on Marcus Aurelius, who advised, "Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one." Legacy is lived, not declared. In this season, who you are matters more than what you accumulate. The harvest of your years is now visible. Like a field ready for reaping, it reflects choices made across seasons, some deliberate, some imperfect, all instructive. You are not beginning again. You are bringing everything full circle. As Isaac Newton humbly stated, "If I have seen further, it is by standing on the shoulders of giants." Your vision now is extended by experience. You stand on the accumulated lessons of your own life, able to see further because you have lived longer. The path forward is not about reclaiming youth, but about exercising wisdom. It is about recognizing that this season, often quieter, often overlooked, is where life becomes deeply lived. Here, recognition gives way to inspiration. Inspiration yields truth, and truth empowers you to act with calm authority. You have earned the right to choose meaning. You have lived long enough to shape what remains, and in doing so, you complete not just a chapter, but a life brought into alignment, rich with wisdom, grounded in purpose, and enduring in legacy. At this stage of life, perspective changes everything. You have climbed enough mountains to know that the view matters more than the climb itself. When you were younger, the ascent consumed your attention, each step measured, each obstacle negotiated with urgency. Now, standing higher on the ridge of years, you see how the winding paths connect. From here, life appears less fragmented and more coherent, as though the scattered chapters are finally revealing their shared theme. What once felt like unrelated episodes now form a single narrative shaped by choice, endurance, and quiet perseverance. This is the advantage of having lived long enough to see patterns rather than moments. The harvest. The harvest of your years is not measured in possessions, but in understanding. You have gathered insight from victories and humility from failure, learning that both are necessary teachers. The efforts that once felt wasted, jobs that did not last, relationships that strained, risks that did not pay off, now reveal their hidden purpose. They strengthened your judgment, broadened your empathy, and taught you restraint. Like autumn fields ready for reaping, your life holds meaning shaped by patience and endurance rather than speed. You recognize now that harvest does not arrive all at once. It comes gradually, as clarity replaces confusion and acceptance tempers ambition. You have lived long enough to see that the seeds planted in one decade often bear fruit in another. This understanding transforms regret into respect for the process. What seemed like delay was often preparation. What felt like loss was sometimes redirection. As Aristotle observed, knowing yourself is the beginning of all wisdom. Self-knowledge is the true harvest of years. It is earned through repeated experience, honest reflection, and the courage to learn from outcomes rather than deny them. This harvest brings quiet satisfaction. It is not the excitement of conquest, but the steadiness of comprehension, the knowledge that you have lived, learned, and integrated lessons that can no longer be taken from you. The contribution. With experience comes responsibility. The world is filled with noise, opinions spoken quickly, conclusions reached without depth, but it is hungry for wisdom. Your lived understanding, earned through decades of decision, consequence, and reflection, serves a greater purpose. You understand the cost of mistakes and the value of restraint. You know that advice given lightly is often ignored, but example lived consistently is remembered. Your contribution now may not look dramatic. It may be offered through guidance shared at the right moment, through steadiness during uncertainty, or through quiet counsel when others feel overwhelmed. You bring context where others bring reaction. You bring patience where others bring haste. This is not accidental. It is the authority of experience. Consider Confucius, who taught, wisdom, compassion, and courage are the three universally recognized moral qualities. Later life is uniquely positioned to embody all three. You have seen enough to be wise, felt enough to be compassionate, and endured enough to be courageous without display. Your contribution carries weight because it is grounded in reality. You understand consequences because you have lived them. In a world quick to discard the old for the new, your presence reminds others that depth cannot be rushed and understanding cannot be downloaded. The completion does not mean closure. It means coherence. This is the season to resolve what remained unfinished, not by starting over, but by integrating all that has been. You no longer feel compelled to erase earlier chapters. Instead, you weave them together. Unfulfilled dreams may now be expressed in refined form, shaped by realism and depth rather than urgency and illusion. Perhaps completion appears as forgiveness long delayed, or as acceptance of a path taken with its imperfections intact. Perhaps it is finishing a work not for recognition, but for personal integrity. You understand now that wholeness does not require perfection, it requires honesty. As Marcus Aurelius reflected, the happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts. Completion comes when thought aligns with truth. In this season, you no longer argue with reality. You work with it. And in doing so, you experience peace that earlier striving could not provide. This coherence brings calm authority. You are no longer divided between who you were and who you are becoming. The two now speak to each other, forming a single voice shaped by experience, the lasting impact. You have lived long enough to know that true impact is rarely immediate. It unfolds across generations, carried in values passed on, lessons shared, and examples set. Much of what matters most will never be traced directly back to you, and that is precisely what makes it enduring. You understand now that influence often works quietly, like roots strengthening soil long before fruit appears. The call at this stage is not urgency born of fear, but purpose grounded in understanding. You act not because time is running out, but because time has taught you what deserves attention. The legacy you shape now will endure, not because it is loud, but because it is real. Reflect on Viktor Frankl, who wrote, "Life is never made unbearable by circumstances, but only by lack of meaning and purpose." Meaning is the final measure of impact. In later life, you are uniquely equipped to live with purpose precisely because you have faced hardship and persisted. And remember the humility of Isaac Newton, who stated, "If I have seen further, it is by standing on the shoulders of giants." Perspective is cumulative. You see further now because you stand on decades of lived evidence, your own and those who came before you. This is the quiet peak, the place where life becomes deeply lived, where recognition gives way to understanding and ambition yields to meaning. From here, You no longer chase the horizon, you illuminate the path. Your wisdom is not an ending, but a harvest offered forward.